In this session, I'd like to speak a little bit about the Book of Wisdom. Now, the Book of Wisdom is one of the last books of the Bible to make it into the Old Testament. It was probably written around 50 BC, and it was written in Greek, which is the reason why you find the Book of Wisdom in the Catholic and Orthodox Bibles, but you don't find it in the Jewish Bible or the Protestant Bible. Remember the Jewish definition of books for the Old Testament? They have to be written in Hebrew or Aramaic. And Wisdom was clearly written in Greek. In fact, it shows a lot of Greek philosophy. It speaks about the afterlife. And in the afterlife, it says that we will be souls with God. Notice it doesn't say bodies, doesn't have a sense of the resurrection, but it does have a sense of the divine recompense, of a judgment at the end of time. And if we're good people, we will be rewarded. If we're bad people, we'll be punished. Remember, throughout a lot of Jewish history, that wasn't the case. People believed that everybody went to Sheol, good, bad, and indifferent. And Sheol was sort of a holding tank. It wasn't a reward, wasn't a punishment. It's simply where you subsisted, didn't even exist. This speaks about the fact that the evil say that a person who dies young is punished, and the author says no. That person is with God. That's a reward. Now, the earliest idea of wisdom was that wisdom was simple folk sayings, sort of like what we hear from Benjamin Franklin. A stitch in time saves 9, early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Those sort of sayings. And you do find those in Sirach and in Proverbs. But the Book of Wisdom has personified wisdom. Wisdom has become a special messenger of God. And in fact, it is wisdom to seek God and to know God. Wisdom was present when God created the world as an architect, as a blueprint for creation. And wisdom is offering herself to anyone who seeks her. In fact, she goes through the city looking for the uninitiated, the foolish, and she offers them a meal of bread and wine. Does that sound familiar? That's why when Jesus took bread and wine at the Last Supper, the disciples finally understood that when they spoke about wisdom in the Old Testament, they were really speaking about Jesus. They just didn't know it yet. It also speaks about King Solomon. He was considered to be the wisest of all kings. Now, in certain ways, he was wise. Remember how the Queen of Sheba came to visit him to find out if it was all true, and she went home saying it is all true. But he also did some foolish things, such as building temples for his pagan wives. It was a mess. And unfortunately, he was so insistent on building new buildings, new cities, that he almost bankrupted the nation. Just reminds us that we all have our talents, we all have our faults. Solomon, though, is considered one who sought wisdom. Remember when he went to that shrine, and instead of asking for long life or victory over his enemies or for great riches, all he asked for was wisdom so that he might guide the nation. The second half of the Book of Wisdom deals with the whole Exodus experience. And it tries to show that the Egyptians, they were being punished because of their sinfulness. And in rabbinic circles, there's an old saying, as the sin, so the punishment. When you choose a certain sin, it already carries in itself the kind of punishment you'll receive. For example, St. Paul says in the letter to the Romans worshiped animals, so they became beast-like. And that's why so many of the plagues in Egypt are animals. The lice, the frogs, all of these animals coming because the Egyptian worshipped animals. Whereas the wisdom of God protected the Israelites and brought them home to the promised land. What can we learn from this? Well, first of all, when we sin, we are asking for loneliness. We're asking for selfishness. Why should we be surprised if God gives us what we asked for? Sort of the old lesson, you made your bed, now lie in it for a while. But if God lets us feel the consequences of our sins, it's not because he wants to punish us or he hates us, but rather he wants us to learn the lesson that that sin can never bring us true peace, can never bring us joy. It's only following God, as the Israelites did, that we'll be able to enter into his promised land. And this book also teaches us about wisdom. If you're going to a spiritual director, somebody who will guide you in your spiritual life, I strongly recommend, don't go to the one who's the most intelligent. Go to the one who's wisest. And some of the wise people I've met in life have no formal education. They have what's called common sense. They have a sense of beauty and a sense of truth within them that is able to see beyond the surface. To seek wisdom in others, to seek it in ourselves. Because when we find wisdom, we will find God.